We will get to the scale. I want to be known as the individual who led the business to $1 billion revenue. To put that into context, that's probably an 9,000 people strong organisation. It's significant, but it has to be done in the right way.
Kevin Fowlie is the recently appointed Chief Executive of Network Plus. His role coincides with a hugely exciting time for a company that has seen rapid growth in recent years to become one of the UK's leading service providers.
What we do is disruptive, but if we can do it in a way which causes the less impact, engaging with the customers in the best possible way and keeping them informed, and once we have left, we leave the property or outside the property in a better place than how we found it, then we've done a good job.
Kevin has a wealth of experience in the utilities sector and is dedicated to making sure Network Plus grows and excels in critical areas like health and safety, sustainability and customer service.
We have a very, very much an open door policy, and I don't mean just having your office door open so people can walk in, but people know they can pick up the phone, they can text, they can email, and we respond, and we do it quickly so that they're being listened to and we can act upon suggestions.
I'm your host, Andy Donnelly, and in this episode, Kevin shares his vision for the future, his strategies for success, and explains why he believes there's never been a better time to work in the industry. Kevin, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Can we begin by talking about how your career in utilities began?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the sector now since 2002. Straight out of uni, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I did computing and maths at uni, so I ended up doing something totally different. I went for 3 main interviews, one at Marks and Spencer's, which was for a store manager, one at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which most people know of, and the other one was Enterprise, the utility contractor. So I didn't have a clue what a reinstatement was, what dig and repair meant, what overhead lines really were. But I ended up going into the company for an interview, and the place was buzzing. It was genuinely full of energy, full of young people as well, which appealed quite a bit at the time, and it just felt like a lot of hustle and bustle and quite exciting. And that's how I joined Enterprise, as it were, and sort of never looked back, and that was 20 odd years ago.
So first impressions then are important.
Absolutely.
So in terms of first impressions, what kind of first impression do you want people to get of Network Plus, whether that's clients, whether it's prospective employees? What kind of impression are you out to create?
We are a big business now, Network Plus. We are significant. We employ around 5,000 people, so it's a large number of people that you want to try and influence every day, every week. I think as people enter the building or enter the business, we want to be agile. We want to be inclusive. We want to care for people, make sure people get home safe every single day. I mean, the key thing for me is people need to be proud. We want to deliver on behalf of our clients and our customers. And I think the way we operate, the way we are energised, the drive, that rubs off on people. And ultimately, I want it to be an exciting place to be. We work for a long time, and it's important people enjoy what we do.
And how important is your particular role as Chief Executive in that?
Ultimately, I've got to set the tone for the business and the pace for the business. I genuinely enjoy the responsibility of being CEO of our company. I've been around, in terms of utilities for a couple of decades now. I've seen what's good, I've seen what's not so good, and I think if we can make the company culture one which embraces innovation, embraces that energy, embraces fresh ideas, we ultimately become a place to be, and that's what I've got to drive. I've got to make it exciting for people and make people want to work for Network Plus.
You mentioned inclusivity earlier. By definition, if a business isn't being inclusive, it's being exclusive. So what type of initiatives are in place within the business to make that inclusivity count?
Yeah, what we do is really focused around communication, so we can have all the policies and different procedures that any company can have, but it's how do you actually employ them within the business. From an engagement point of view, we have things like quarterly town halls where we invite any employee, whether that's operative or anybody from an office environment, onto a Teams call, and we'll update them on what the business is doing, where it's going, the opportunities that exist. And I think that's particularly important because I think it gives people a sense of scale. people the sense of being able to grow within the business and actually being able to talk to people around their own career progression. So I think that is really important. We also have various weekly meetings as well. So on Monday, I chair a call with our top 100 individuals. They lead our contracts, so they cast a big shadow into their own areas. And we share business updates, what's happening from an HR point of view, what might be happening from an IT or a systems perspective. And again, they can cascade that through the business and really engage with the workforce that way. We do things like these podcasts. We also do things like Friday Focus, where we stand the workforce down and we'll have a conversation with them around safety primarily. But it's a great opportunity to engage on anything from customer, innovation, quality of work, their own well-being, and just generally what's working and what's not working. If we get that two-way communication working really well, we'll be a much better and much more inclusive workforce.
So it seems like you really value that, employees, colleagues, at whatever level, that they've got that line of sight to the top of the business. Now, you haven't always been a chief executive. You haven't always been previously a chief operating officer. So you've been on the other side of the fence too. Is that experience, informing your sort of approach now as a chief executive?
Absolutely. I'm a great believer that most solutions come from the individuals doing the job. We've got to recognise we're not a production line. We're not making cans of Coke, or cars on a manufacturing line. We are all about our people. Our people who are out there each day repairing overhead lines, repairing water mains, laying gas mains. They are the people who will generate the value within the business. So it's important that we listen to them. If we can all make their life easier, then as a business, we will be much more productive. We'll be a better quality business. We'll deliver for our clients and their customers in a much better way. It's got to happen that way. Most of the people I've worked with, I've had the pleasure of working with some incredible people during my career, and everybody has naturally risen through the ranks and they've had experience of working at the front line, supervisory roles, maybe quantity surveyor roles, safety roles, but they've been involved in the actual doing. And I'm a great believer that everything we do needs to enhance the working day of the individual doing the job.
And just looking back at your own career then, and maybe the biggest influences on you within your professional career, who would they be? Is there any single person or experience that you'd want to point to and say, yeah, that person or that experience really made a difference for me? That was when the penny dropped.
Yeah, I think there are so many, and there's some obvious ones as well, and I probably wouldn't want to name them to embarrass them if they were watching this. But the reality is I've had the pleasure of working with some incredible individuals. I'd like to think as you learn through an organisation, you pick up bits and pieces off individuals and you look at what they have impacted you through and how that's worked for you as an individual, and take the best bits almost, whilst also creating your own leadership style as well. So I think, the list would be quite long, and that could be anybody from Network Plus's previous CEO, Dan, previous CEOs in my employment at United Utilities, just generally people throughout the workforce. I'm as inspired by somebody working on the front line as I am somebody sat in a senior executive role, and sports plays a big part for me as well. Anybody who will know me will recognise that I draw a lot of parallels into the world of football as a Manchester United fan and Sir Alex Ferguson, but it doesn't stop there. I think there's a lot around sport in particular that can go into leadership in terms of performance improvement that really does play a part in my thinking and how we get the best out of people. And that might just be changing style. It might be motivating in a certain set of circumstances. It might be going into that cup final, which for us might be, the final bid presentation on a particular tender. But it does draw a lot of relevance. But yeah, I couldn't name one single individual because I've had the pleasure of working with so many.
Well, let's personalise it a little then, from your personal life then. So, coming out of university, you've graduated, and then you've got that sliding doors moment where there's this utilities industry that you don't know too much about, and then there's Marks and Spencer, where you've probably got people in your family saying, please take the Marks and Spencer job because you can get me discounts and this, that, and the other. Is there anybody from within your family background who's been a great influence on you and maybe helped in your decision to not go with M&S and not go with Enterprise, but to jump into the utilities industry?
Yeah, I think a couple I'd have to call out. So my nan, from an early age, my nan sadly passed away when I was 14. And I remember at the time I wanted to be a footballer, like most 14-year-old boys want to be footballers. She obviously saw that wasn't necessarily a valid career option for me, so she recognised I wasn't that good, and therefore encouraged me to pursue qualifications. And I remember distinctly the point she made around getting your qualifications, almost to the point where after that it doesn't really matter what you do, and that stuck with me. So I was the first person in my family to go to university and get a degree. The second person I would say is my dad, because he actively encouraged that. And my dad had his own business, sort of one-man band, self-employed, working all hours. It wasn't unusual for my dad to get a call out as a fire alarm engineer 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and he had a work ethic whereby he would get up and he'd go, and that stuck with me from a young age. I can probably sort of recite memories from the ages of 6, 7, 8 years old. So that's always stayed with me, working long hours, working weekends, working out of hours, particularly when I was at United Utilities, where you get called out and you had to respond to incidents. It's never fazed me, and I think that's stood me well in utilities, because it is reactive. You have to be agile, you have to respond, and that is why I genuinely feel so at home at Network Plus, because that is a lot of what we do. We do our core day job, but we've got to have the responsiveness and the agility. We need to respond when the weather's bad, when it's snowing, when the roads are icy, when the overhead lines come down because of the wind and the storms. We are the first response for a lot of our clients, and that is something that is instilled in me. So it did have a massive impact on my career, and I suppose what I do today.
So some of your leadership qualities then, they're shaped, they're hereditary, they're shaped by close family like you now. Have you ever had to really work at other leadership qualities, or does it all just come natural?
No, far from natural. So I think responsibility I've always enjoyed from a young age, and whether that's sort of captaining football teams or managing football teams, or, just the responsibility that you take on in a role like this. So that side of it I've always felt has been quite natural. I guess the things I've had to work hard at are probably things like this, being open and being straight. I was never the world's most natural presenter. I've got quite dulcet northern tones, which I need to work on and, sort of get a bit more excitable. So there's plenty of areas that I need to work at. What I would say is over the course of time, you enjoy that a lot more, and I think I like engaging with people. I like the collaboration with people. I particularly like seeing people do well. So when we see people come into an organisation, I will go out of my way. I want to meet people. I want to welcome them in. I want to explain what's important to us at Network Plus, because it's that which is difficult sometimes to capture. You can get the job description, you can get the roles and responsibilities, but how do you instill that passion that says, right, when the phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, we are there, but we're not just there and turning up, we're there with bells and whistles and giving a premium service. It's quite difficult, but you have to work on that with some people.
And just looking at as we speak now, Network Plus has recently engaged with the National Apprenticeships Week. How important is growing our own, or growing your own workforce and talent, and developing talent through apprenticeship schemes, through graduate schemes and so on?
Yeah, it's massive. The industry is faced with a big shortage of skills and people. If you look at what the government are doing, we've seen the biggest investment coming into the water sector, and that will flow into gas. It's already there, but will increase in electric. There are more jobs and more work available than there are people. So we've got to get people in from an early age to, one, meet demand, but also secondly, to make sure that we're protecting against an ageing workforce as well. If you go back decades, a job at British Gas or a job at certain utility companies was a job for life. People are much more transient now, which creates more opportunities but more gaps as well. I think the apprenticeship is a cracking route. If you look at utilities over the last 20 odd years since I've been in the sector, we've had the banking crisis, we've had COVID, we've had Brexit. We've never been as busy as we are today. It is totally recession proof, and it offers all skills as well. People look at utilities as something that's quite specialist. The work that we do on the ground maybe, but we have every single other function that any other business would have as well. So it just creates opportunities for everybody to really to prosper. I think genuinely there's careers for life, doing whatever anybody wants to do.
Great stuff. And then in terms of the business itself and you leading that business, where do you see the business going and developing in the short term, in the medium term, and even in the long term?
So I think we often use revenue as a bit of a parameter for scale of a business. We are a £650 million revenue business. I want to get us to 1 billion. I want us to be the leading UK contractor across utilities and similar activities such as highways. We're in a position where we are well placed. The competitor base is quite limited. So from that point of view, now is a really good time for us to move into that space. A lot of the investment, what we see coming into the sector is largely bigger works. So whether that's wastewater recycling plants, environmental type schemes, or building infrastructure from an electricity transmission point of view. We do some of that, but that isn't our bread and butter. We specialise in the high volume, low value reactive work. And that is where I think we can make, quite a unique offering to our clients and their customers. We will get to the scale. I want to be known as the individual who led the business to 1 billion revenue. To put that into context, that's probably an 9,000 people strong organisation. It's significant, but it has to be done in the right way. We have to have the right processes in place, the right procedures in place. It needs to be sustainable. It needs to be a place where people want to work, and more importantly, where people want to progress their careers. You mentioned earlier, growing our own. We've seen tremendous success by giving people opportunities and to grow through the business that they might not ordinarily have sought themselves. And that is where where I see some of our future growth coming from.
And is it a concern that the business could grow too quickly?
I think we've probably been through that journey. I think if you look at what's happened in the last 5 or 6 years, we've gone from 100 million to 600 million, and I think we've had some of those growing pains. I think we've deliberately taken steps last year to increase the leadership team, increase capacity, bring in different capabilities as well to complement the existing leadership team, which I think was important. We're investing in a lot of system and AI technology, which is really, really important in the sector moving forward. We're doing a lot of transformational type work as well. And what we're not trying to do is boil the ocean. What we are trying to do is implement incremental improvements in what we do. We've got to keep the DNA of a business. That's probably my biggest challenge. How do we grow at scale, at pace, but keep the entrepreneurial and the agility in our DNA, which has made us what we are today. But it's a fascinating challenge and one I thrive on.
Well, let's just pick up on AI and technology there, because it's the future's here now, and it sounds like you're embracing it. But how is Network Plus embracing new technology now to deliver better services for customers and clients?
So there's a few areas. So we've invested in a system called Total Mobile, which is a work management platform, which gives us full visibility of the end-to-end job, including the commercial aspect of what we do. That's really important because up until now, we've had modular type systems. So we've been able to capture all the information as we go along, but actually joining that up, keeping customers informed and being able to evidence the work that we do in a timely manner has been challenging. So that is something that will benefit our clients and their customers alike, because they will be able to make investment decisions on the back of the data we provide. From an AI point of view, I spoke around the skill shortage. I think AI is popping up everywhere. Wherever you look, people are doing things with AI. I think as a sector, we're probably a little bit behind the curve. And as a business, we're learning quick. We've almost got to focus in on what we want to do, because there are many options available to us. So we've almost got to pick and choose and think, right, actually, that's what we believe will add the best value to our clients and their consumers as well. But in terms of keeping customers informed, in terms of maybe mitigating some of the people risk, particularly from an overhead point of view and back office, there's a real part to play for AI, data analytics and technology in general.
We're about to announce a tie-in with a tech company based just up the road at Media City. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So the opportunity there is very much around proactive monitoring and proactive leak detection. So when I answered the previous question, I was very focused on the business in terms of the actual technology and AI available. But there's a lot out there from a sort of system diagnostic perspective. So if you think around what we do, if we strip it right back, we react to problems that go wrong in the industry. So whether that's water, gas or electric, or trees coming down. Operational technology prevents or promotes data around things going wrong before they actually go wrong. So whether that's detecting wastewater rising to a level before it becomes a blockage and impacts the customer by flooding the property, or whether that's a water mains effectively telling you or signalling that there's something wrong and it's going to leak or burst prior to a customer losing the water supply. Our work would be working with companies like that and responding. So you're responding at a time. So a lot of the activity we do would probably remain very similar, but we'd be doing it proactively instead of reactively. From a water, gas, electric company perspective, you are nipping the problem in the bud before it becomes a problem. So the old customer impact is minimised. The reputation remains in place because you've not flooded a customer or you've not knocked the water supply off of electric. And, we're getting there and providing a proactive and not a reactive service. If you think of what we do, or particularly what our clients do, it should really be a silent service. You turn your tap on, water comes out, you flush your toilet, wastewater goes away. You don't want disruption to those services, and actually if we can prevent that disruption in a more collaborative and joined up way, it can only be beneficial to clients and their customers as well.
So flying under the radar, if nobody's noticing, we're doing a great job.
Absolutely.
And the clients, going back to the clients then, so that's good news for the clients. We're investing in new technology, getting ahead of the curve, nipping problems in the bud. That's good for the client. And he said it's good for the customer as well. Can we just talk a little bit about customer service? Because you've mentioned the financial targets that we've got, but there are also softer targets out there around customer service and the quality of and how we deliver for our mutual customers, ourselves and the clients on behalf of the customer.
So customer service is one of my key drivers. I thought I knew customer, having done this job for 23 years in terms of working in the sector. Customer's always been important, but trust me, when you start working for a utility company direct, you don't realise just how much customer is embedded in everything that we do. So that for me was a great experience because actually I can take that back into the contracting world and look at actually how do we then impact customer. We talk around safety, we have all the processes and procedures and workshops and meetings and, discussion forums for safety. But if you take it to the next level, everything we do impacts customers. Every single job we're employed to do as an end customer, a bill paying customer at the end of it. So it's really important that we get that level of service right. Things do go wrong, so when they go wrong, it is about service recovery and how we actually put that right. But from a cultural point of view, we're on a journey to make sure that actually our customers, and when I say our customers, I mean the utility companies, bill paying customers, are an advocate of Network Plus. If they had a choice of somebody to come up and do the work that we do, and let's be honest, what we do is very disruptive. We're digging up the road, it's noisy, it causes traffic problems, we might be blocking people's drives for days on end. It's not getting a box of chocolates delivered to your front door or going out for a nice meal or ordering a programme off Sky or Netflix. What we do is disruptive, but if we can do it in a way which causes a less impact, engaging with the customers in the best possible way and keeping them informed. And once we have left, we leave the property or outside the property in a better place than how we found it, then we've done a good job, and that will only please customers.
There will always be some people, whether customers or just members of the public per se, who will not react or sometimes react in a way we don't want them to, engaging in an offensive way with frontline operatives. What are we doing to tackle those scenarios and that issue?
I think there's a couple of areas. I think the reality is society is changing. I think you only have to see the news over the last 12 months and you can see the strength of feeling, I guess, towards water and waste companies in particular, given all the environmental sort of activity that's going on there. It is important that we recognise that from a contracting point of view, our people are, causing disruption by the very nature of the work that they undertake, which, can get the wrong customer sentiment. So I'd like to say, when you see our customer scores across all of the contracts, they are always really strong, and that's something I'm particularly proud of. But we've got to recognise that society is changing. there's cost of living crises, there's people losing jobs, there's all the recent impact of taxes going up, etc. That impacts people in different ways. So the individual driving to work, getting stuck in our traffic lights because we're doing a utility job, they are reacting in a different way than they maybe did previously, and we've got to equip our individuals to deal with that. We've been working with the Institute of Customer Services around service with respect, and there's a service with respect week coming up in March, and this is all around just raising awareness. I think we weren't necessarily capturing all the data we needed to when it comes to people reporting abuse from individuals and the public. That is something we've spent a lot of time on actually since the session in December with United Utilities and the ICS, because what it did do was really flag, hang on, there's a change in mood here within our customer base and our demographics that we serve. And actually, when people report stuff through, they're maybe not capturing it as customer abuse. I think the other thing is as well, our teams are probably quite robust. Our teams are out there every day. They probably face a level of whether it's abuse or conversation, shall we say, or even if it's a car driving past and beeping the horn aggressively, they probably face that, and they probably face that for quite some time. So I think we've got to reset the level of expectation on what is acceptable to people and what's not. I say they're robust. Not everybody will take it with a pinch of salt, but dare I say, I think a few of our teams will. They'll just sort of take it for granted that stuff happens. But it is becoming much more prevalent, and we've seen through other sectors such as highways that there's been people being attacked. We've had an individual on our Bristol Water contract who was attacked over the Christmas break. That isn't acceptable. People don't come to work to earn a living to then be physically abused or attacked. It's not acceptable in any way, shape or form. We wouldn't send our kids to school to get beaten up and come home would be in the worst condition. So it's really important to us, and I think we've got to equip them. We've got to raise awareness. We've got to reset the bar on what is acceptable and what's not acceptable, and we've just got to continue pushing on it. But it is something we're seeing a rise of, unfortunately.
I mean, it's really heartening to know that you've got their back. If I'm an operative frontline, I need to know that back at the ranch, back at the office, somebody's got my back, I can report in. And it's an important dimension as well of the whole health and safety agenda, isn't it? How important is health and safety culture and process at Network Plus?
It's number one priority. I said before, you don't go into work to not get home, or come back injured, and every single injury for me is avoidable. We do have, we work in a very hazardous environment. We have to manage change a lot. Obviously our individuals are out there working in all sorts of conditions, and that can be as much, sunny days as well as the adverse wintry conditions we often refer to. We've got to equip our people properly to be able to work in the conditions we put them in. It is paramount importance to us that people go home safe. As I say, there is nothing worse than seeing injuries come through. There's nothing worse than seeing people having to take time off work, because they've been injured, so they're unfit to come into work as a consequence of undertaking their day job. That just can't be right. You wouldn't accept it for your own family, and I wouldn't accept it for mine. And I talk about Network Plus as being a family. If someone gets injured, that's one of us. And we should treat it like that. It shouldn't be something that we just accept and these things happen. It can't. We've got to continuously drive improvement in everything that we do. And we do have a bit of a zero sort of tolerance approach as well. So we will put the right processes in place, the right procedures in place. Unfortunately, sometimes individuals choose not to follow process and procedures, but we do learn. We've got to learn. We've got to take that learning forward and understand, well, why did they not follow the process? Why haven't they followed the procedure? Was there something we have done? Were they rushing to get to another job? Were they rushing to get home? There's lots of behavioural type aspects in there. To sort of cap that bit off, we've been working closely with Cadent on the old sort of safety and mental health and wellbeing piece. We've got Whoop devices rolled out across a number of our employees. I've got one as well. They're brilliant, but they're worrying as well. They tell you how much sleep you've had or not had. They identify stress factors. They identify breathing, how you react to different situations, exercise, etc. But we are now getting to quite a sophisticated place with Cadent where if we had an incident, we can not only interview the individuals and understand the learning, but we've actually got real biological data which can say, right, well, actually the individual didn't have a lot of sleep last night, and that made, a contribution to a particular incident. So then we can work with the individual to get to a next level of learning, and not just, well, this is what you need to do next time. Actually just really work with them to get a better outcome for them as individuals and ultimately us as a business.
And this must be very reassuring as well for our clients, not just Cadent, but other clients, that our approach is so robust and so intuitive as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the stuff we're talking there more latterly is quite new. So that's something we're looking at. How do we deploy that? It's a two-way path, this one. We need our operatives to buy into it, which on Cadent they have done. And it's been fascinating to see. It's been fascinating to understand what metrics we can get out of a device versus how they are setting themselves up for a day. If you look at what some of our guys do, it is very physical work. They're burning thousands of calories a day, excavating the ground. It's a very manual job. So making sure they are hydrated, making sure they're eating properly, making sure they're sleeping is of paramount importance. You look at some of the calorie burn of some of the individuals, it's like running a marathon or half a marathon. It's significant. Yet they'll be drinking big bottles of Lucozade and eating fish and chips for lunch, which they probably feel the need to because they're starving and they're thirsty. But actually, if you're an athlete, you're not doing that. So there's loads of potential in that, and I genuinely think it will become a game changer in taking it to the next level, because I think we focus so hard on systems, processes, procedures, rules almost. It's getting into those human factors now and understanding how we can work with individuals better to make them safer and ultimately make the workforce safer that we employ.
And that takes us back to your sporting analogies, doesn't it, about, fail to prepare to fail, that sort of approach to your rest, your recuperation, your rehab, your preparation. It's like a virtuous circle, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it is, and I think there's a lot, I say whether it's leadership or just employment or engagement, I'm a firm believer on, you speak to people how you would wish to be spoken to, and I try and remind people of that. If we have a customer incident and we don't always get it right, we'll be the first to hold our hands up and say, we've messed up here and we need to fix the problem, and that's back to the responsibility piece. We can admire the problem or we can get stuck in and fix it and make sure we don't have a repeat of a problem. But there is a lot of sporting analogy that can come into the business world, and that's just generally, not just Network Plus. But I think if people, sort of treat people with respect, manage people differently, not just a vanilla approach, what's right for you might not be right for me and vice versa. So how do we get the best out of individuals to then, sort of formulate that up into teams, functions, departments and the business as a whole?
If you could choose a footballer then, or a manager, to be at a certain level within Network Plus, whether it was a leadership role or an operative role or somewhere in between, who would that footballer be and why?
So a big player when I grew up was Roy Keane, and I, again, when you talk around influence, Roy Keane as an individual didn't leave anything on the pitch, and I've always had that mentality in work. I've always thought, well, if I'm working all week, I want to get the most out of that week, and I think that's helped me progress my career. I've never been one to just turn up, do a day's job and, sort of, be lazy, if you will. You're there, you might as well max out and do as much as you can and get the reward for that as well. So I think I'd have to maybe stick with Roy Keane.
Yeah, well, that's a good choice. That's a very good choice. Just going back to clients and expectations. So we talked about health and safety and their expectations. They've also got expectations, increasingly so, around environment and sustainability. So environmental regulations, but also the ethics around sustainability and looking after the environment. Where are we and where are you on that?
Well, ESG is really, really important. We know that. It's become such a sort of key factor in what we do. I think from a regulatory company point of view, it's quite intense in that space, and again, when you think around some of the challenges our clients have, we're seeing that filter through from a contracting perspective. I think we're very good on elements of it. So, we're innovating quite a bit, particularly on the environmental element and carbon reduction. The reality is we can do so much more, but the technology has got to keep up as well. So we're trialling all sorts of things. I mean, the electric vehicles is probably the obvious one now, and maybe not as new, is it? Because pretty much everyone can get access to an electric car, whereas if you go back a few years, that wasn't the case. But we've taken that now into porta cabins, we've taken that into some of the handheld equipment that operatives use, and we're trialling things like electric grabs, so we're doing what we can in terms of really ramping that up. I think from a social responsibility and ethics in particular, there is a right way of doing business, and we want to do business the right way. I think the reality is, we want to be sustainable. We've got to think more around the products we use, and we use things like recycled material, but actually if you look at where we're moving to, we are doing more capital works. So things like carbon friendly concrete, the different types of sustainable material that are available, we need to, sort of review that consciously as part of our design processes. I think the social bit, it plays into what I said earlier on. Society is changing. Whether that's consumers and what they expect from us as utility contractors or the utility companies we serve, or just people coming into work. People have different expectations and are much more environmentally focused than they used to be. And as a sector, not just as Network Plus, we have to evolve. But we do learn a lot from our clients, and we're not proud to take others' ideas as well. So we will learn, and we're more than happy to collaborate and take that learning from our clients and implement them within our own business.
And there's a forum internally as well, isn't there, where people can bring, employees, etc., can bring innovative suggestions, solutions, and raise them at a senior level.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have various forums. We have our innovation forum, which a couple of the leadership team sort of chair. But we have all sorts of mechanisms. We have a tell me email as well. So if people want to put ideas down on email, they will come straight to myself. We have a very, very much an open door policy, and I don't mean just having your office door open so people can walk in, but people know they can pick up the phone, they can text, they can email, and we respond, and we do it quickly so that they're being listened to and we can act upon suggestions. Worst case is we're already doing it, or we're not going to act upon it, but we can feedback, and that's part of that inclusivity and the engagement. I think we work in collaboration with our clients in terms of what they're doing, so we're often an extension of our clients because of the nature of the mechanisms that we operate in. But we want to innovate, we want to add value in that space. I think I said earlier on with some of the things like AI, we need to focus in on what will drive the biggest sort of bang for buck. And that's not bang for buck in terms of pound note benefit necessarily, but what's going to impact our customers, what's going to be really important to our clients. It might be something innovative from a customer engagement point of view, but if that stops calls and inbound calls or unwanted contacts coming into one of our clients, that's beneficial, and it's payback. So we would really get behind something like that.
So just going back to the data, personal data, we talk about sleeping patterns, talk about preparation and et cetera, et cetera. You're getting all these results fed back to you about your own sleeping patterns. And so how do you relax?
Good question.
Do you relax?
I do relax, yeah. No, I do. Maybe not as often as I would like. Look, we're busy. Our jobs are busy, and we are, as I say, a fast-paced company, and we're UK-wide as well. So you're often travelling around, often on the road, up early, bed late. So particularly at a weekend, I'll try and make sure I get a bit of downtime. Training for a marathon, so the rest side of it's probably gone out the window a little bit because you've got to squeeze your runs in, and there are times where you've got to do that, because you've got a target, you're aiming for it. You might not quite feel up for it, but you've got to get the distance in, as it were. I think I enjoy socialising. I enjoy. I love my job. I genuinely love the job and love the business, but I also enjoy socialising out with work as well. Albeit sometimes the topics take you to work because of the nature of what we do. But yeah, I'll tend to get downtime, get a bit of time with the kids. I'd like to say I've got 17-year-old twins. I'd like to say that's peaceful and restful, but they're both taking driving lessons, and I think I've gone greyer since the 4th of December anyway, which was their birthday. So yeah, it's getting the balance right. I probably haven't got the balance quite right at the minute, but one day.
No, so you can't wait for them to pass, really, can you?
That will certainly, the stress will shift into a different type of stress when they're out there on their own, I guess.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's definitely a test of resilience.
And you were 17 once, obviously, and you were heading towards your computing and maths, further education. What sort of advice have you been sort of imparting to them?
I think it's really strange, isn't it, when it comes to your own kids? And I think I just really want them to enjoy whatever it is they do. And I think any parent would say that. I guess the longer they want to stay in education, I would support them in. So I think it's important that they want to do it, not because they feel like they have to do it. So I think from that point of view, I'd advise them to, go as far as they can, enjoy what they do, don't end up doing something that you don't want to do, because there's so much opportunity out there. I say to people coming into the sector, whether it's apprentices or graduates, the world is your oyster, and in our sector, there's never been a better time. You look at the investment, there is so much investment in the sector. If it was the opposite, you're getting out of the sector, you're cutting jobs, you're cutting supply chain, it'd be quite worrying, but it's quite the opposite. So if people want to flourish their own careers, if our supply chain want to flourish, the opportunities are there. And I'd just say go for it. You've got to knock on the door. Don't wait for somebody to come and tell you, here's an opportunity. Knock on the door. I progressed. I remember knocking on the door of my MD back in the day and saying, I want more. I want to do more. I want to try that. That looks interesting. Can I have a look at? Can I go outside for a day? If you're office-based. No one's ever said no. I think people think that people are going to say you can't do it, but just go for it. Push the boundaries and don't stop. Just keep going.
And that's your message to anybody at Network
Absolutely.
Plus. And anybody listening in, anybody who'll watch this, who's working in this industry or any other industry, I suppose.
Everything I've said around Network Plus is relevant to any other contracting organisation and any other utility company across the UK. I deal with some fantastic people across our client base. I have not had a discussion in the last 6 to 12 months where people haven't talked around resource challenges, and we're talking volume, skills, and that is across sector. There is more work out there than people realise. We're talking billions of pounds of investment, more work than there are people. The supply and demand equation is totally out of kilter. And for somebody coming into the industry at whatever level, that could be apprenticeships, that could be straight out of school, it could be graduates, it could be people cross-training. We do a lot of work with the armed forces. There is so much opportunity if people want it. And all I'd encourage people to do is drive for it. Just don't take no for an answer and keep pushing, because the opportunities are there.
Let's just pick up on you mentioned the armed forces recruitment sort of area. So we have got, or Network Plus has got some quite novel approaches when it comes to recruitment, armed forces being one of them. And then I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but there's an ex-offenders scheme.
Yes.
That's in fruition as well.
Yeah, so look, the Armed Forces is one that's been established with Network Plus for some time. We get people coming out of the Armed Forces who are looking for, a further career. We see a lot of parallels, in terms of discipline. What we do, we're not putting men on the moon. It's not rocket science. It can be complex, so I don't want to oversimplify it, but actually, it is repetitive. What we come in, we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday through to, the next week and the following week and the following month, etc. It's about doing the basics really well, communicating, keeping people safe and delivering ultimately for our customers. And we see those skills are very transferable. That discipline, that repetitive, that drive, that energy is there in plentiful supply, I guess, from the ex-armed forces individuals. I think the ex-offenders is a slightly different route. So we've been doing quite a bit of work in that space over the years anyway. We've probably ramped that up a notch, actually, the last few months. We've working in collaboration with National Highways, working with a couple of prisons in the Northwest, going into the prisons, so directly talking to individuals in there. And, the reality is, I think people have a conception, don't they, of individuals who are inside, and there are lots of different people who end up in prison, and some of the cases are very, very sad, and actually they just want the opportunity. They don't want to go back into prison. And we are seeking the individuals who recognise what they've done is wrong, recognise that actually they want to do something right. They've often got families, they may have children, and we want to give them an opportunity, in the right space with the right support, which is really, really important. and we will invite them into the business, and hopefully they will flourish within the business. We've got some real success stories of where we've achieved that. We've had people come into the business and they've flourished and they've been promoted several times into the business. My view is we can't write people off. People make mistakes, and as long as they acknowledge the mistake and they don't do it, they don't want to do it again, then why wouldn't we talk to them?
And that's absolutely, I mean, who hasn't made a mistake, So
I think the challenge, and just picking up on your point, Andy, we went in and I went in personally with National Highways, and it was so refreshing. And you listen to individuals and you think, wow, for a moment in time, for an inch in time, you're listening to some of the things that they've gone through and why they are in prison, and actually you think, wow, it's incredibly sad, one mistake, and it has been one mistake, so I think I think the key thing for us is putting the right support around them to help them flourish when they come into employment, but it is something that we're very pro.
So your message then to anybody who's thinking about a career in utilities, whatever your background, whatever your circumstance, there are opportunities here at Network Plus. So what would your message be to them, to anyone who's thinking about a career in utilities?
So I think utilities is flourishing. I think, not to oversimplify or, it's tough. It's a difficult sector in many respects because you've got many different complexities that you're trying to manage. But if you're somebody who wants to grow a career, if you're somebody who likes the idea of lengthy long-term employment, which is resilient to things like Brexit or COVID or recession, look no further. Any potential role you can think of within any business exists within utility companies or contracting organisations like Network Plus. It's exciting, it's fast paced. Genuinely, if you're someone who doesn't like the routine of 2 days being the same, it's a good place to be. Because whilst I said it, it is a bit of a do this, do that, do the other. What you can't sort of really capture is what happens when the weather changes. If it's snowing, we're busy. If it's raining, we're busy. If it's windy, we're busy. If it's sunny, we're busy. Every extreme weather impacts us in a very different way. But the variety, the differences in potential career paths, the flexibility. I've known people who've come in from a finance graduate or into a finance role and ended up running contracts operationally, doing things that they would never dream of doing. I've seen commercial people. I was commercial, so I've ended up moving across into operations and then up for it. But I've done business development, which again is brilliant for developing certain skills, and it's quite exciting as well when you're bidding and winning work. We've worked in safety. I've done IT. Any role you can think of is available.
It's almost as if you can have an entire portfolio career just at one business if you really want to.
Yeah, and I think you absolutely can, and I think you can get a lot of responsibility and a lot of accountability. You can get good rewards, so it's a very rewarding career path, I believe. I've been in the sector, as I say, for 20 years, and I've loved it. When I sort of back to what would you advise your kids to do? I've sort of sown a bit of a seed, but equally, they want to, sort of find their own way as well. So I don't want them just to land into the sector, but genuinely, I would imagine most sectors would say similar, but I genuinely think it's fun, it's interesting, it's not going anywhere. So for generations to come, people will need water, we will need to deal with wastewater, we'll be using electricity for a long time, we'll have some form of gas, hydrogen, etc. warming up our homes. So it's a place and an environment where people can prosper with a view of the sector is not going anywhere. And that, for me, is quite a nice sort of foundation, I think, for people to build a career on.
And probably a good point to finish on. It's been a fascinating discussion, truly enlightening. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure lots of colleagues at Network Plus and across the industry will enjoy listening to what you've had to say this morning.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to the next one.